Here we go. Welcome to another Locked On 49ers live episode. We are talking 49ers legacy today, past, present, and future. One of the listeners asked us about some 49ers and legacy questions, and it got me thinking, what is this current 49ers group going to be remembered for if it all ended right now? So we're talking Jerry Rice, we're talking Anquan Boldin, we're talking Kyle Shanahan legacy on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We appreciate all of the everydayers out there. We love you. And if you are not one, you can be one real easy. All you got to do, subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you hit the thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you know when we go live like we are right now. And yes, we always see it in the chat. Are you guys really actually live right now? Is this a premiere? No, we are actually live today, right now on YouTube. We like to finish our week going live on Thursday evening for our Friday morning podcast for you audio listeners. Big things happening in the network. Just got out of a little network meeting. So we'll let everybody know about some of those things we learned today about the future of the network, which is always a lot of fun. Love the growth in it, and absolutely has to do with all the listeners out there and all the everydayers. Croc, this is an interesting episode because it came from the ideas of a listener and one of our mailbag questions that kind of came through on Twitter earlier this week. And I think it's a fascinating question. And some folks might have been listening to the intro and say, why did he just say Anquan Boldin talking about 49ers legacy? I'm going to go to Thad. And this is where the question that started what we're going to talk about on today's episode. He says, would you consider Anquan Boldin to be a top 10 49ers wide receiver of all time? And in the same vein, would you consider Jerry Rice to be a top 10 Raider? And he said also hashtag no QB talk. We might talk quarterbacks incidentally, but this is not a quarterback episode. So appreciate the question, Thad. And I know right now there's just so much quarterback talk with the 49ers and the controversies that are going on there. But this is an interesting one. Croc, what do you think about we'll start with that question. Anquan Boldin is a player like that who's a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver who played with the 49ers. Do you consider him an all-time 49er? And someone like Jerry Rice, who was the best wide receiver of all time, do you consider him an all-time Raider because of the numbers he put up with the Raiders?
I think the easy answer is no to both of those. And the reason why is because when we talk about Deion Sanders as a 49er, we get pushback. And he had his greatest season ever as a Niner. And people just do not view him as a Niner. Now, people have, I've gone to games where guys have the Deion Sanders 49er jersey, but just, kind of checking the temperature of the fan base as a whole, a lot of them, when you think of Deion Sanders, they don't really consider Deion a 49er. So if they don't consider him a 49er, what all the great things he did, having his best year, defensive player of the year with the Niners, his only defensive player of the year award, winning a Super Bowl, all the things he did, and it's like, well, he's not a Niner, then I don't think that Anquan Boldin is a Niner for playing a couple seasons with them, even though, they were good seasons, and 49ers, went deep in the playoffs one of those years. And then Jerry Rice, obviously going to the Super Bowl with the Raiders and having, terrific seasons, even at the age that he was at. But I find it hard to believe that, he would say, yeah, I'm a Raider, black and gold.
Yeah, it's a tough question because, as Distortion Production says, Boldin had a 1,000-yard season, but it didn't ultimately impact the identity of the team or result in a championship. Championships are
I think he had 2,000-yard seasons. Actually.
And what's crazy is when I think of Anquan Boldin, I still think of him making massive catches against the 49ers to beat the 49ers in a Super Bowl. So to me, when you say, is Anquan Boldin an all-time 49er, I don't even, no way. It's not even close. He had some really good seasons, and he was an awesome player. But I'll think of him as the Cardinal. I think of him as a Raven. Won Super Bowls, and so that's who Anquan Boldin is. Jerry Rice is an interesting one because everyone thinks of Jerry Rice as a 49er, but dude played until he was 42 years old. And what's crazy is I went to the stats because I just wanted to see, is Jerry Rice an all-time 49er? I know he had some nice seasons there, but he was no Tim Brown, right? And so I go to look at Jerry Rice's statistics and all-time Raiders receivers, and I was blown away. I knew he was productive, but I was blown away how productive Jerry Rice was as a Raider. In his age 39 to 41 seasons, he played 3+ seasons. He got traded in his 4th season, so he played 3 full seasons, age 39 to 41, and then part of another season. Jerry Rice, Bobo in the chat says Jerry Rice was a Seahawk too. Yeah, Jerry Rice Seahawks should never have happened. The cornrows that started like halfway at the back of his head, that's like a look that didn't need to happen. That's a uniform he didn't need to wear. But Jerry Rice was awesome as a Raider. And in his age 39 to 41 season, Jerry Rice put up enough numbers to be top 6 all-time wide receiver for the Oakland Las Vegas Raiders. He just got passed. He's 7 now for wide receivers. He just got passed by Hunter Renfrow for receptions. So just looking at receptions, yards were pretty similar. So
he might have an argument more so than Deion as a Niner.
And the 49ers legacy, it's a little bit harder because they've had better players and better teams than the Raiders have. And the Raiders have won Super Bowls, and they've had some great players too. But just as far as receivers and pass catchers, Jerry Rice in 3 seasons, starting at age 39, is a top 10 receiver in Raiders history. And that's including running backs and tight ends. And they've had some good tight ends there. If you look at just wide receivers, he's top 6, top 7. I mean, that's insane for a wide receiver to be there for 3 years and be right there. And those 3 years to be age 39 to 41. That is pretty wild. But then again, I don't think Raiders fans would claim Jerry. You can't claim Jerry. Jerry's a 49er. And the 49ers can't claim Anquan Boldin. I think it's a one-team conversation for any of these players. And I think legacy is pretty important. And football is not the same as baseball, where in baseball you have to choose which hat you wear when you go in. When you get your bust for the Hall of Fame, you go in with a certain team. And I think of I think of football and especially with the NBA, I think it absolutely hurt. And Croc, I know you're big on the NBA, and you got a Lakers jersey hanging behind you. Don't you think it hurts LeBron James' legacy to have bounced around to all these different teams and try to build super teams? And if he just stayed in Cleveland and he was Mr. Ohio, Akron kid, he stayed in Cleveland, won multiple titles there. He built super teams there because he's magnetic. Players would have come to Cleveland to play with LeBron James. He didn't have to go elsewhere. He didn't have to go to South Beach, as he put it, to go win a title, right? He didn't have to go to the Lakers. Are you kidding me? That's it's almost blasphemous. We're oh, dude, you got the greatest player of all time, hometown kid, Cleveland, Ohio. And you're oh, I'm going to bounce to the Lakers. It's come on, dude. I think it's absolutely hurt LeBron's legacy. So I love seeing players stay with one team for a long time. And when you think of a player, you think of that one uniform, that one time when this was the guy who just ruled the land.
You're talking about basketball right now. And I think Damian Lillard, he's kind of going through that. He's kind of planted his feet in the ground and is I don't want to leave here. Somebody please come help me over here in Portland. And he wants that to be his legacy. Ultimately, we'll see how long he lasts before he's okay, I got to get out of here. But I do appreciate him doing everything he can for the city of Portland. As it pertains to football, though, I think it is different. But as far as the legacy, right? Because, Randy Moss, he was a 49er for a bit. And I don't think anybody will ever consider Randy Moss a 49er or Randy Moss a Tennessee Titan. So I think part of it, or at least having an argument, is how well Jerry Rice played for the Raiders. So I think on paper, he absolutely can be considered a Raider great or Raider legend. But I don't think that they would claim him as a Raider.
Right. That's the thing. It's is he one of the greatest Raiders? Yeah, he is. And the stats tell you that. But is he a Raider great? Then no, they can't claim him. And I think you only be claimed by one team. So it's a big no for Anquan Boldin as a 49er. It's a big no for Richard Sherman as a 49er. I saw that in the chat. It's a no for Montana as a 49er. Joe Montana is a 49er. Big no for the Chiefs. Big yes for the 49ers, right?
Did he take Chiefs to AFC Championship game?
He didn't win 4 Super Bowls. I know that.
He did not win 4 Super Bowls with them. That's before my time. I wish I could have. The quarterback stuff gets brought up a lot. I really wish I could have watched Joe Montana as a 49er. Fun fact here, and I don't think anybody would question my fandom for the Niners, but I have never watched a full game of Joe Montana playing quarterback in my life.
Like live as it's happened, or even going back and watching it?
Ever. Anything.
I mean, that's just...
what year did he leave to Kansas City?
But you haven't gone back then.
Yeah,
what that was 91, 92?
Yeah, man. 4 years old. Man.
And like I remember that happening, but I don't even know. It didn't impact me as much as like I don't even remember what year it was. You know, I know it was that kind of a roundabouts of when that was. All right, more on the 49ers legacy coming up here. I want to talk about some of the current 49ers as well. Kyle Shanahan, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, right? The 49ers have a lot of star players. What is the legacy right now? Where do we see that legacy going for some of the current 49ers and this current group next? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose at FanDuel. That's $200 you can spend to bet everything from money line to over-unders on baseball games to who hits the first home run in a game. All that on an app the app is safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. And I can't say enough about the FanDuel app and the website and the interface. It is so easy. Build your own parlays. You got NFL odds as well. You can bet week 1, 49ers, Pittsburgh Steelers. You can go bet all the way through. You can bet week 13, 49ers and Eagles if you want to. Those lines are already up. Rookies of the year, receiving yards, season awards, and of course, the next Super Bowl champion. All of it at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and of course, Major League Baseball all summer long, every single day. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel. So just sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. This is a good stat too, because we talked about Jerry Rice, Croc, from age 39 to 41. Do you know, I don't know if you've been reading the chat. Do you know who is second after the age of 40 in NFL receptions all time to Jerry Rice?
The Biletnikoff?
It is none other than, thanks to Nathan for throwing this in the chat, Tom Brady.
That's crazy.
And it's like 40 yards or something like that, I think. I can't remember what it is, but it's not a big number. So unbelievable what Jerry Rice did in his career. As was pointed out earlier in the chat, he had 2 Hall of Fame careers. He had his Hall of Fame career until basically 31, and then he have another Hall of Fame career starting in his early 30s when a lot of guys are retiring and doing something else with their lives.
What's more important, Jerry Rice being the only 40-year-old outside of Brady to have yards after the age of 40, or Tom Brady having receiving yards after the ?
Yeah. Oh man. And remember, there was that one play where was it like a halfback toss or something, and he was on the right side. I think that must have been after, because Brady played until he's 45, so I think it was within the last 5 years, 5-6 years. And Brady had that catch, and he kind of tripped himself up, but he kind of felt like he was going to run for a while.
Yeah,
and then he didn't quite have it.
For a guy who takes as much.
Oh wow, okay, so it's actually fewer yards than I thought. It's 2 yards. Tom Brady has 2 yards. Jerry Rice has 2,000 after the age of 40,
and nobody else.
Apparently, nobody else.
Larry plays guys out, man. Once you start kind of 33, that's the thing that's so impressive. I mean, at the age of 33, Jerry Rice had, and this is why I say, man, like, this dude's the greatest ever. You're 33 years old and you're going for 1,800 yards. And it's like, come on, man. Like, that's ridiculous. 1,800 yards at the age of 33. Most guys at the age of 33, they're phasing those guys out of the NFL.
So I was thinking that Larry Fitzgerald, he's like the most recent guy. I was thinking he must have played pretty close to 40, right? So his last year with the Cardinals, and by the way, a guy, legacy, Arizona Cardinal, his entire career. I love that. 2020, his final year, 37. So he got close, but still, he would have to play. He would have to play last year, play at the age of 40.
And not only play,
no, he would have to play this year, 2023.
Not only play, but Jerry Rice was putting up 1,000-yard seasons. Like Fitzgerald is like, all right, you're just not the same, and so he was able to hang around for a couple more years. And Jerry Rice is like 37. I'm putting up thousands of yards after the age of 37. That's crazy.
That's pretty nuts. Yeah, he's having 1,200-yard season. Rick says, legacy is a combination of years with the team, contributions to the team, and were the years you spent with the team high quality? And that's a great segue, Rick, to go into the next part of this conversation.
So I got a talk about
is. Oh, okay.
So he said years. I know he said years, but Deion Sanders, because we're talking about, how you contributed. What did you contribute to? Your production. Again, that was his greatest season. He was Defensive Player of the Year, and they're basically saying, he's responsible for really helping aid the 49ers to a Super Bowl victory.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, an all-time great season. Is he a 49er great? That's a tough one because he's got a ring. He played the best. We've talked about this before, Croc. That was the single best season of cornerback play in the history of the game. Was Deion Sanders 1 year with the 49ers. His ability to return it, his ability to shut people down. He was at the height of his career. He still had all of his freakish athleticism, but he's a little bit older, a little bit of a veteran, a little more savvy than he might have had in the younger portion of his career. I mean, just unbelievable. And the Niners won a Super Bowl. That's legacy. I would probably put that over Anquan Boldin's 49ers career, even though it was longer.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But I don't think of Deion as a 49er. I think of him as a stinky-ass Cowboy.
Right, and that's the interesting thing, right? We don't even think about him. We don't think about him as a Falcon.
Not that much, no.
When I hear Deion Sanders, I envision him in that two-tone Dallas Cowboy blue. And
that makes it even harder as a 49er. Like when you think of Deion Sanders 49ers, I think of him as the rival, because I hated Deion when I was a kid. I was like, why are you wearing a wristband on your neck, dude? Come on, give me a break, right? Like he's so flashy. He was like, shut up, come on. I know you're great, but like even though he played the year with the 49ers, I hated him more. Than Richard Sherman or someone like that. As easy it was to hate Sherman, but that's the other thing that's funny is like how quickly people will love a player once he's on your team. Sherman was the most hated player in the NFL for 49ers fans until he became a 49er.
Deion Sanders, and I know the hatred there, but the way he talks about it, the 49ers didn't offer him a contract.
Well, that's all they wanted. They're like, cool, we got our ring. Thanks, Deion. And I mean, they were already paying everybody so much anyway. Like those were like the pre-salary cap days too. So they're already paying everybody everything, and they're bringing in, Richard. They're bringing in everybody they can. Deion wasn't the only mercenary they brought into that team to go win either. Let's talk a little bit about the legacy for current 49ers, Croc. And I think it's so important for this team to win a ring. And the window is wide open right now for the 49ers. But, man, the window could close pretty quick. And I think Kyle feels it. And I think Kyle knows. I don't think Kyle cares necessarily or is reading newspaper articles about how he can't win. But I think he knows he hasn't won and wants to. We know John Lynch is a super competitive guy. John Lynch already a Hall of Famer. But he's not a Hall of Famer because he's GM. He's a Hall of Famer of what he did on the field. He could be a Hall of Fame GM. And getting a ring, legacy-wise, cements everybody. It changes everybody on the team. Tabor Pepper, the long snapper, Super Bowl champion, right? Everybody, let alone the GM, the head coach, the quarterback. And it's so impactful for legacy. And This team is close. This team is really good. They've been to back-to-back NFC championship games. They know they have the talent. They have stars everywhere. But Kyle Shanahan, he could go to the next 10 Super Bowls and not win. Doesn't matter because he didn't win it. From now until the end of time, unless Kyle gets a ring, he's the coach that couldn't win the big one.
That win, I feel like it's coming, but like you said, that window can shut fairly quick, and typically teams as good as the 49ers are, that's not sustainable over a long period of time. And you've seen all these coaches kind of go through that. I mean, we reference Andy Reid a ton as it pertains to Kyle Shanahan and his trajectory, but I mean, that was a team that went to 4 straight NFC championship games and a Super Bowl, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh, he's kind of. Is he good anymore? And he just had to have a change of scenery and ended up going to Kansas City. And then ultimately, after years of being there and kind of being solid, he got over that hump, and it kind of took getting Patrick Mahomes to be able to do that. So for Kyle, do you think that it's going to take, because we've talked a lot about how he is with the roster that he has, which is great. And you got some guys are going to be some all-time great 49ers on his roster. But with as talented as it is there something that he's going to have to learn about himself that he might not be able to learn here with the 49ers?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to give my answer on that question. Talk about a few more 49ers players as well as it pertains to legacy in this current group of San Francisco 49ers in 2023 next. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast, and check out what else the network has to offer, like the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Myself and former NFL scout Matt Williamson breaking down the entire league daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. That's a big question, Croc, that you just asked me. And as it pertains to Kyle Shanahan, he has to win one, clearly. John Lynch really wants to win one. John Lynch doesn't have to. He's got a bust in Canton. NFL head coaches don't really, like Marv Levy never won, right? He went to 4 Super Bowls and didn't win them. He's in the Hall of Fame, right?
4 Super Bowls, though. I mean, that's
4 in a row, and right. Super Bowls, not just AFC Championship games.
That's got to be torturous. My dad lost a lot of money on that. I think he kept betting on the Bills to win, and they were losing. I remember that.
Wait, what?
My dad, he kept betting on the Bills.
I thought you said Marv Levy was betting on his team to win.
No. My dad was. And there were some players that just got caught kind of betting on some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
In the league, getting suspended. So, man, guys around the league, be careful with that stuff.
What are you doing? Do not bet on your sport. Did they? I saw that there were some guys getting suspended. Do we know the names yet? It's not any 49ers, right?
No, some Colts players, Rodgers.
Rogers.
Another guy. I mean, they instantly got cut from their teams too. But back to the question though, it feels like sometimes we've all been there, right? Where you're doing something and okay, I'm doing well, but it kind of takes being removed from that situation to say, okay, I need to change how I go about doing this, or if I could change one thing, it would be this part about me. And then they change that, and then ultimately that kind of helps them or helps you kind of get over the hump and something that you were maybe a little bit more stubborn on, because at the time it's like, well, this kind of works for me.
Right. And you don't have a choice. And it's harder if you're already on that path. Like Kyle's built his tracks, he's built his train, and he's going. It's hard to make a hard turn from there. Like they're going in a direction, and you almost have to get worse to get better in some ways. And that's the whole Trey Lance debate is, maybe he could be the best quarterback, but he might not be the best quarterback right now. Can you go through that? And if you get put in a new situation, a new team, you have no choice. So Andy Reid, he kept going. Kevin Cobbs of the world, and it's like, this isn't going to work. He finally got fired. That was it. Goes to Kansas City. New outlook, new team. who's this? He went and got a kind of an old hat, sort of a let's go West Coast offense guy that can manage my game and get Alex Smith in here. But man, this really talented quarterback that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were like, yeah, let's not look at quarterbacks right now. You know what? Let's see what we could do with a guy this talented, and let's coach him up.
But you know what? And here's different. And I don't know if this is something that Andy Reid learned over time, but Mahomes was not Andy Reid's guy. It was the other person. Veach, there was someone else. Someone stood on the table and was like, you got to draft Mahomes.
And at the time,
listen.
John Dorsey was actually the GM. Brett Veach was, I think, the assistant GM. And this was Brett Veach's guy. And Brett Veach was kind of, I don't know if they already knew that John Dorsey was going to step aside and then Brett Veach was going to come in and take over and be the guy. But this would be the equivalent of Adam Peters is like, we're going to do this. This is my guy. And Kyle lets it happen and John lets it happen. I can't see that happening with this current 49ers, but that was sort of the situation with the Chiefs at the time. And Brett Veach was the one that was the point guard of that whole thing with Patrick Mahomes. And obviously it couldn't have turned out any better for Andy Reid and the Chiefs.
So as great as this team is and the path that the 49ers are on, I'm watching something by Brett Hollerman. I think I said his name right. And just talking about just how great the 49ers are, the roster and the yards per this and the first in this and the first in that, right? So clearly Kyle Shanahan is an excellent coach. But getting over the hump, right? Like doing something that maybe you're a little bit more uncomfortable with, just with whatever, something about your process. It feels like Andy Reid for a while, maybe he was kind of that guy a little bit, maybe, I don't know, in Philly. But clearly in Kansas City, he's just like, I've done this long enough. I've had some success. I wasn't able to get over the hump by myself, on my own. And when I say on my own, just in the sense of I'm running the show, doing things how I want to do it. Okay, I'll take your input, but I'm going to do what I want to do. And maybe it takes someone where it's just like, this is what we're going to do.
It does.
All right. And will that ever be Kyle? And that's going to be tough because he, regardless of what anyone says, a lot of success, man. You go 3 NFC championship games in the Super Bowl, 3 out of the last 4 years. That's, you built this team from the ground up. So to me, that is a certain level of success. But now you're going to be measured on this whole different realm. You're not viewed as the Cleveland Browns who just can't get to the playoffs or can't win a playoff game. You're going to be viewed as, we talk about him in the same breath as Andy Reid, like we're doing right now.
He's gonna
when you mention like that, you gotta go above and beyond. You actually have to win it, which is extremely difficult. Only one team wins of the year, but when you have the team the 49ers do, it's like, hey, this is the time. And I wonder, because you hear the things about him and just how he is, and got to be the smartest person in the room, and all this, that, and the other. And the players respect him and all that, but there's something. There's something quite missing. And obviously it's easy to question it right now because the 49ers haven't won that game. And once they do, it's like, well, maybe it was just, didn't matter that he's the way he is. But there's something about him that it seems like it's kind of blocking him a little bit.
Yeah. And we've talked about that before. It seems like maybe he's just gripping everything a little too tight. But you asked legacy-wise, if he doesn't win one, we're going to remember great teams, but we're going to think of him just like we think of Jim Harbaugh right now.
Yeah.
It won't be any different. And remember how intense it was during the Harbaugh era. You're right there. Man, it's one of the greatest things ever. Didn't happen. And the further you get away, like, oh, that was interesting. Yeah, it was fun, Harbaugh era. 10 years from now, if it all falls apart in the next couple of years, we'll be like, oh, I remember the Shanahan era. That was pretty fun. Remember, yeah, he couldn't win the big one, but he's a good offensive coordinator. That'll be the legacy. He's got to win one now.
Remember when 49ers went to 6 NFC championship games in 11 years and just could not win the big one.
And so I do want to talk about the window really quick because this 49ers window, and I won't blame the 49ers at all because they know this, and whether they're thinking legacy or just he knows he needs to win a Super Bowl, wants to win a Super Bowl, Kyle and John are driven to win a Super Bowl. They're going to do everything they can. And if they're trading future assets and they're doing everything they can over the course of the next couple of years, or even this camp or something, or even at this deadline again, do another McCaffrey type move, I can't blame them because they're so close. And this window could close a lot faster than I think 49ers fans realize and want to, and really, want to believe. And like by 2025, this could be a completely different roster, like completely.
Did we not see that with Jim Harbaugh, right? It was like, man, you're on top of the world, 3 straight NFC championship games in the Super Bowl. And then all of a sudden, that 4th year, crazy injuries. I mean, that was one of the most injury-riddled teams I've ever seen. Seahawks were on this like surge up, which kind of feels like they're kind of turning that corner right now, right? And then all of a sudden, there's just this disconnect between the CEO, Jet York, and head coach Jim Harbaugh, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's blown up, and you're just trash for the next several years. I mean, but how fast did that happen? I mean, you went from literally great to just, it was like that, winning 2 games. In the second game that you won in that year that you won 2 games was the last game of the season. Or second to last game of the season. That was tough.
Yeah, it went from we're going to win the Super Bowl this year to we're picking second in the draft. In a heart. Yeah. Are there any current 49ers that were that are legacy 49ers, right? Like Trent Williams, Hall of Fame guy already, retires tomorrow. He's a Hall of Famer probably, but most of his career was with Washington. He didn't come up with the Niners. He didn't become a Hall of Famer with the Niners, although that part of his career has helped.
I think he has.
I mean, he played a decade with the Washington, right? So that who are the Hall of Famers that became Hall of Famers on the 49ers right now currently?
I've won, and I don't want to skip over Trent Williams because he's having like the most success in the sense of like postseason. He's playing at the highest level ever, so there's still a chance that he's considered, like when it's all said and done, like, oh, that's a 49er great, just because of the highlight of his career. Like we talked about Deion Sanders in that 1 year with the Niners, and that was great. But then he still had, good year, won the Super Bowl next year with Cowboys, played several years there. Like,
so like,
see it happen like that.
Trent Williams' Washington career is kind of like Deion's Falcons career, you're saying?
Right. Where I was like, man, I don't even look at him. I look at him as a Cowboy, not really a Falcon, because it was kind of whatever on Atlanta, right? The team. But so Trent, I think there's an argument for him, but definitely, I mean, come on, Nick Bosa, in the sense of if you're talking about how great the great 49er players, I know maybe some people might be like, well, what about Fred Warner? I don't know yet, because, I mean, how many people right now today would draft him if we just had a draft and you had to take linebackers? Will he be taken before Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman? I mean, even Bowman. Bowman was first team All-Pro 4 times, like in a short span. So, I don't know if he, obviously he's awesome, but Nick Bosa, he's in the mix with any of the great 49ers.
Hardware too. Defensive player of the year. Huge, right? Name recognition. He was drafted high. He's on that path for sure. George Kittle, he has to put up some more stats and some more seasons. He's already at the age of 30. And that's where this could all, change pretty quickly. Christian McCaffrey, obviously, most of his career was with Carolina. Is he going to play deep into his 30s with the 49ers? It's hard to project that for a running back these days.
I think
he could do it, he could, but it's tough.
I think for George Kittle, I think when it's all said and done, his time with the 49ers, I think it'd be very weird. I think it'd be a little underwhelming, because we saw the boom, and then it's like, okay, and then since then it's just like kind of this roller coaster of like where you feel like, no, he's like the best tight end in the league. You feel it, but you just like, you don't see it. I mean, we'll feel it, right? Like the people that got to witness it is like, man, George Kittle was a monster. He pancaking guys, blocked extremely well. He could catch a 5-yard pass, take it to the house. Like the people that watch, but some of the people that, kind of maybe how I would talk about Brent Jones or Dwight Clark or somebody, right? Like where I didn't really get to see it. Some of the people that didn't get to see it, and then they just look on paper, they're not going to feel the same thing that we've felt. So I think that's the one thing that can kind of stop him for someone who, as talented as he was, when you look out the paper, it's like, well, the production, yeah, there's this year where he broke the record. And then after that, it was just like, well, what happened after that?
Yep. Hall of Fame voters don't put people in because they were good blockers at tight end, right? They're gonna compare you to your peers. So they're gonna look at Kittle stats and they're gonna look at Kelsey stats, and they're gonna say, well, Kelsey was in a different category. So then they're gonna have to try to compare Kittle with past Hall of Famers, and then so he's gonna have to put up a lot more numbers to be considered one of those guys. And he should get more targets, right? We need to make T-shirts. We need to get T-shirts. Kittle, like some sort of a Kittle 10 targets per game shirt. Like, just get a campaign going, man, because I want to see it.
Right. You split him out. Do we ever see him like line up as a detached tight end? Like you see Travis Kelce. Some people are like, oh, he's a big slot. Yeah, I mean, he lines up with his hand in the ground too, but
definitely, but not to the level of like, this is our like, we're trying to get him the ball right now. It's third down. This is our guy. That's not. It's not really been the MO for the 49ers and Kittle. And like his strongest suit has been after the catch as well. It's like, let's do the whole Shanahan, get him in space and let him do work after the catch. Not like, okay, it's third down. You win. The ball's coming.
And the crazy thing is he can. And the fact that they don't utilize him like that, a lot of people think he can't win like that. It's like, no, just watch him, man. He's one of the most fluid pass catching tight ends in the league.
And he's worked on it. Like he's putting on tight end you. He's worked on it. He's become such a better route runner than he was earlier on in his career. He's winning mostly without athleticism. He's got head nods. He's got everything in his game, in his bag now as a route runner. I love George Kittle. Get him the ball. Let's make T-shirts, guys.
Get the ball.
All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in on the live episode and making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day. Croc and I will be back with you next time right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.